There was once a man who harbored immense ambitions, yet found himself ridiculed by his own mother, who had little faith in his intellectual pursuits. To her, the books he spent his life writing were worthless, nothing more than paper that could only be used by a pharmacist to wrap up medicine. Despite this lack of maternal support, he was a man of extraordinary talent and fierce independence. He displayed a piercing ability for insightful thinking and meticulous observation from a very young age, refusing to accept the surface-level explanations of the world offered by his peers. In the vibrant years of his youth, he completed what later generations would come to consider a masterpiece of Western philosophy, a monumental work that presents the entire world as a manifestation of will and representation. However, for more than half of his long life, his path was far from smooth sailing. He was envied and often mocked by his academic peers, who found his ideas too radical or too grim. People in the intellectual circles of Germany secretly despised him, and for decades, very few people even knew his books existed. His copies sat on dusty shelves, unread and unappreciated. It was not until he was well over 60 years old that his work was finally discovered by an English critic, whose glowing review sparked a fire that spread across Europe. Almost overnight, after a lifetime of being ignored, he became famous worldwide. This man had endured indifference, mockery, and profound loneliness for over 60 years without ever compromising his vision. He was a man who remained at odds with mainstream opinion throughout his entire life, yet stayed steadfast in his own way, and his name was Arthur Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer was a great German philosopher who left a profound and lasting influence on some of the most famous figures in history, spanning the fields of philosophy, literature, psychology, and physics. His ideas provided the intellectual bedrock for individuals such as Friedrich Nietzsche, Richard Wagner, Sigmund Freud, and even Albert Einstein. Today, Schopenhauer is often primarily known as the philosopher of pessimism. However, it is crucial to understand that his pessimism was not a cry of despair or a surrender to hopelessness. Rather, it was a profound and courageous insight into the darker, more realistic aspects of human nature and the mechanics of the world. From within that perceived darkness, he remained steadfast in his pursuit of the light, seeking practical ways to help people live more wisely, more authentically, and ultimately, more happily. In his final significant work, titled The Wisdom of Life, he turned his attention toward the question of human happiness. He asserted a radical truth that living a happy life is not about the aggressive pursuit of pleasure or joy, but rather about the art of escaping and minimizing suffering. He asked a question that resonates even more deeply today. How can we truly escape the suffering that seems so inherent to the human condition? This less traveled path he proposed is intended for souls seeking a genuine awakening, for those willing to distance themselves from the relentless noise, the hollow pleasures, and the wasteful extravagance of high society. Though this book was written in the 19th century, the philosophy within its pages remains strikingly relevant in our modern era. Today, just as in Schopenhauer's time, people use crowded social gatherings and loud parties to mask their internal spiritual poverty. They chase after endless material possessions, hoping to fill the yawning abyss of their inner selves with things. As Schopenhauer himself wrote, the richer a person is internally, the less they are influenced or manipulated by external circumstances. Those who possess inner value and a wealth of spirit will find a sense of complete fulfillment that no amount of money can buy. He taught that there is no need to sacrifice your dignity to meet the superficial demands of others. nor is there a need to give up your true self just to fit in with the mindless crowd. Conversely, the mediocre person, fearing the vacuum of their own mind, immerses themselves in constant social interaction and makes endless concessions just to be accepted. By understanding Schopenhauer's philosophy, you will realize that people with rich inner lives often find it difficult to socialize and integrate with the masses. They may appear a little eccentric because they prefer the sanctuary of solitude over the exhaustion of small talk. They might even be considered oddballs or antisocial by those who cannot understand them. Yet, these individuals may well be the pioneers who hold the secret code to lasting happiness. Now, let us listen to a deep sharing from improved version titled, "The richer the inner world, the harder it is to get along with others." We will explore this through the lens of the classic philosophical work, The Wisdom of Life, by the one and only Arthur Schopenhauer. You will likely find yourself suffering forever if you cannot recognize what is known as the pendulum paradox. Schopenhauer famously stated that humanity's happiness has two eternal enemies that constantly threaten our peace: suffering and boredom. He argued that life is like a pendulum clock, constantly and relentlessly oscillating between these two extremes. We are either in the throes of acute pain or drifting in a sea of utter boredom. And for the average person, there seems to be no escape from this movement. Poverty and deprivation breed physical and mental suffering, while sudden abundance and the fulfillment of every wish lead directly to the stagnation of boredom. Schopenhauer believed that most people's lives are defined by this pendulum, being tossed back and forth without rest. On one end, we experience the pain of deprivation as we struggle with making ends meet, worrying about our survival. This is when the heart hungers for love that it doesn't have, or when the soul longs to be understood by a world that seems cold. However, when we finally reach the other end, when we have enough money, when we achieve our career goals, when we have the house and the car, we find that we still feel empty. True meaning and value remain elusive, and the weariness of abundance sets in. The pendulum swings back and forth, never stopping at the point of true equilibrium. The pendulum that Schopenhauer described symbolizes the nature of unfulfilled human desires. It represents the burning anxiety we feel while trying to achieve our goals, and the icy emptiness that settles in immediately after those goals are reached. He pointed out a cruel irony. We yearn desperately for what we don't have, and then we quickly become resentful or indifferent toward what we have already achieved. In our modern world, humanity is caught in a particularly vicious cycle fueled by dopamine. When you crave a goal, your dopamine levels increase, providing you with the motivation to take action. However, once you have reached your target, your dopamine drops suddenly, leaving you feeling flat and unsatisfied. Eventually, your brain, craving that next hit of excitement, prompts you to find new goals to chase, simply to increase your pleasure chemicals again. You are repeating the cycle over and over. Please stop and ask yourself about the items you so excitedly bought recently. Did the joy you felt end shortly after you finally held the object in your hands? This whirlpool of desire makes you live like the character Tantalus in Greek mythology. He was punished by being forced to stand in the middle of a clear, cool lake with delicious fruit hanging just above his head. But every time he tried to drink, the water receded, and every time he reached for the fruit, the branches blew away, leaving him perpetually thirsty and hungry despite being surrounded by plenty. Indeed, in our current society, one undeniably needs money and material possessions to survive. But the influence of material wealth on true happiness is never about the sheer quantity of the things we own. Social psychology studies have shown a fascinating trend. The difference in the quality of life between someone earning almost nothing and someone earning a basic living wage is massive because without money for essentials, you cannot truly live. However, the difference in happiness between a person with a comfortable income and a person with a massive, multi-million-dollar fortune is almost negligible. Once our basic needs for food, shelter, and security are met, our level of happiness remains almost unchanged regardless of how many more millions we accumulate. When you chase after the next 100 million or the next billion, happiness does not increase exponentially. It is like pouring water into a bottomless pit. This is supported by the hedonic treadmill theory in modern psychology, which mirrors Schopenhauer's philosophy perfectly. People think they are running forward toward a destination of happiness, but in reality, they are staying in the same emotional place. Science concludes that when you achieve a major life goal, you only experience a temporary spike in happiness before quickly returning to your original, fixed baseline. People often say that lust and excessive desire kill happiness. And while you may know this intellectually, have you ever really asked yourself if you're that pendulum? Do you find yourself constantly feeling deprived, as if you're lacking many things? Do you feel sad because you haven't had the opportunity to travel to exotic lands, eat at the finest restaurants, or shop without limits? Do you feel oppressed because you haven't been promoted? Even those who have stable careers and comfortable lives often find themselves constantly seeking out new forms of entertainment to fill the perceived monotony of their existence. They are living the reality Schopenhauer described, like thirsty people in the middle of the ocean. The more salt water they drink to quench their thirst, the saltier the water becomes and the thirstier they get. So, which way are you currently tilting your head? You will find that no matter which way you swing, you will always retain the characteristics of the other side. Without a change in perspective, life becomes a series of meaningless acrobatics. Schopenhauer foresaw this nearly 2 centuries ago and pointed to a single, enduring solution. If you keep living like a pendulum, you will never be truly happy. Instead of being endlessly swayed by external factors, you must seek a journey inward to live a rich and fulfilling inner life. There's a certain type of person who is like a fish swimming against the grain. This person chooses inner abundance over the relentless pursuit of external wealth. They have made the bitter choice to stop seeking material riches in order to nurture their spiritual life. It is at this point that a social phenomenon occurs. The richer your inner world becomes, the more you will be perceived by others as difficult to get along with. Schopenhauer stated quite clearly that the more a person possesses within themselves, the less they need from the outside world, and the less important other people become to them. Many people with rich inner lives find it difficult to connect with the average person, because society operates based on shared, often superficial conventions. From communication styles to the common measures of success, everything is designed for the crowd. When you choose to live authentically and prioritize your spiritual needs, you naturally step out of that crowd. You will no longer be accustomed to finding your self-worth through the eyes of others, or through their validation. This requires a unique kind of courage, a willingness to be different in your way of life, your thinking, and even in the values you uphold. A person of inner wealth often refuses to participate in meaningless social gatherings that offer nothing but noise. They shake their heads at pointless drinking invitations and remain silent in the face of trivial gossip. They are brave enough to end toxic relationships that drain their energy, and they refuse to chase every passing trend. They do not work solely for the purpose of accumulating more money or achieving higher status. All of this makes them seem strange or aloof in the eyes of others. The crowd might perceive them as arrogant, unapproachable, or even a failure because They do not meet the standard milestones of success. But the truth is, being difficult to get along with in this context does not mean you have become a cold or hateful person. It simply means you no longer waste your most precious resource, your time, on things that are not right for your soul. You decline invitations to socialize not because you look down on others, but because you would rather dedicate your time to reading, meditating, or creating. You don't participate in the frantic rat race of career competitions, and if your performance on a corporate KPI seems lacking, it isn't due to laziness, but because you're focusing your energy on work that carries actual meaning for you. This selective approach may cost you some social connections, but in return, it allows you to build much deeper, more sincere connections with a few like-minded individuals. And most importantly, with yourself. Schopenhauer himself is a clear example of this principle. He was born into one of Europe's most prominent and wealthy merchant families, surrounded by luxury from the day he was born. Many people mistakenly believe that because he didn't have to struggle for food, he disregarded the value of money. But Schopenhauer did not deny the role of economics. He frankly admitted that money was vital because it freed people from the crushing burden of physical survival. However, he believed that everything beyond that was merely an ornament for self-esteem. His family's wealth allowed him to focus on his philosophical studies without the distraction of making a living. Yet he refused to trade his inner freedom to become the exemplary heir his family wanted. While society expected him to continue the family business, he chose to walk a solitary path, writing about the nature of human existence. Imagine if someone offered you 100 billion VND today on the condition that you must work a job you hate for the rest of your life. While many would say yes, they would eventually wake up every morning with an empty space in their hearts that no amount of money could fill. For Schopenhauer, true wealth comes from the richness of one's inner spiritual life. This society has always encouraged people to be sociable, praising those who easily blend in and follow the crowd. But if you're too harmonious with the crowd, you will never be at peace with yourself. Being sociable is not the same as being in harmony. Being a socialite without genuine self-awareness is just a false sense of belonging, where you force yourself to laugh at jokes that aren't funny and compromise your principles just to be liked. True friendliness is giving a genuine smile to the person sweeping the street, while having the strength to refuse a party with a corrupt person. It is about genuine communication between souls, not superficial social gymnastics. How, then, can we live a life of true inner fulfillment? When a person focuses on enriching their inner life, they will naturally begin to minimize their external desires. They realize that by reducing unnecessary cravings, they directly reduce their own distress. Look at the difference between an adult and a baby. Adults often get lost in a jungle of complex desires for fame and power. But a baby in its mother's arms, as long as it has enough milk and a safe place to sleep, has a happy smile on its face. The baby is content because its needs are simple and itself is not yet burdened by societal expectations. Schopenhauer pointed out that to avoid the trap of chasing desires, we must first learn to let go of our worries about the future and our regrets about the past. We must learn to actually inhabit and enjoy the present moment. Dwelling on the past, wondering why you didn't seize an opportunity years ago, or why a specific tragedy happened to you, only serves to increase your regrets. Similarly, worrying about a future that hasn't happened yet, worrying if you'll have enough money when you're old or if prices will skyrocket, ruins your mood and steals your focus from the now. My sincere advice to you is this: for future outcomes that haven't happened yet, live as if they will never come. Do not let tomorrow and yesterday steal the breath of today. Schopenhauer does not call for us to become ascetics who give up every material comfort, but he reminds us that true freedom begins when we know exactly where the boundary lies between our real, fundamental needs and our fleeting, ego-driven illusions. Everything after those basic needs is just a meaningless game played by society. Let money be a tool to serve your spiritual life, instead of a chain that turns you into a slave of your own desires. The next step in this process is to know exactly what it is you want to do with your life. From a young age, Schopenhauer understood his own path. He said that a person who has silently discovered their predetermined purpose in their heart will be like a worker bee building its hive, striving with natural focus to fulfill their destiny. A truly rich inner self belongs to those who understand their calling and pursue it steadfastly. To achieve that level of understanding, we must cultivate discipline and accumulate a wide base of knowledge. Only then can we realize what we are truly suited for and create real value. In his early university years, Schopenhauer didn't just study philosophy. He built a multidisciplinary foundation in physics, physiology, botany, anthropology, and law. His notebooks were not just transcriptions of lectures, but were filled with his own affirmations, denials, and doubts. He was fluent in 7 languages, which was the key to his ability to engage directly with the greatest classic works of history. He believed that books are a microcosm of the world, and that those who do not read are condemned to live a very limited, simple life. Throughout his life, books were his spiritual companions, allowing him to dialogue with the greatest minds across time. This continuous accumulation of wisdom helped him recognize his mission very early on. Understanding oneself is the first door to true freedom. No matter your current age or your profession, it is never too late to begin learning about yourself comprehensively and deeply. Read books that challenge you, hone your skills, and experiment with different methods of learning to discover where your true strengths lie. When you truly understand yourself, you will know what your role in the great tapestry of life is, and you can dedicate yourself fully to that work. You will no longer be doing things just for the sake of status, money, or the desire to win against others. The next vital component of an inner life is to dedicate time to creative solitude. Schopenhauer is often called the father of the philosophy of solitude, but this wasn't because he worshipped being alone for its own sake. It was because he realized the profound truth that only in moments of solitude can the mind be tranquil enough to understand the essence of life. He declared that we have only 2 choices: dare to be alone to cultivate wisdom, or blend in with the crowd to become a faded, blurry version of everyone else. Creative solitude is not an act of escaping from the world. It is a proactive separation from the frivolous noise, so that you can finally hear your own inner voice. Schopenhauer spent the majority of his life alone in his study, reading and writing, and this allowed him to see through the transparent nature of desire and the absurdity of much of human existence. I want to remind you to let moments of silence embrace you. Spend more time alone. Listen to your own breath and learn to enjoy your own company. In that tranquility, your inner self has the space it needs to become rich and to discover its hidden strength. Another pillar of his wisdom is the principle of emotional neutrality. One should not be overly happy or overly sad because of anything external. Our judgment of whether an event is good or bad is often just an illusion created by our limited perspective. Many people have fallen into deep despair because of a perceived failure, only to realize years later that it was actually a great blessing in disguise. Conversely, there are things that make us feel jubilant in the moment, but ultimately become the source of our greatest suffering. Life is impermanent and in constant flux. A broken heart that causes you to cry your eyes out today might be the very experience that allows you to grow into a more compassionate and resilient person later. A promotion that feels like a victory today might bring a level of pressure that pushes you into a mental health crisis tomorrow. Schopenhauer does not advocate for being an unfeeling robot, but he wants us to let go of our desperate attachment to immediate results. He wants us to see that each event is just one important link in an endless, complex flow of cause and effect. The important thing is to keep your mind calm and centered. Do not let your emotions overwhelm your reason. Do not get overly excited by good news, and do not wallow in the darkness of sadness. Only by maintaining this equilibrium can you avoid being controlled by external circumstances and continue your journey inward with confidence. Finally, we must remember a classic and undeniably true quote from Schopenhauer. A healthy beggar is happier than a sick king. Health is the absolute foundation for everything else in life, including the journey of inner fulfillment. In his book, he states that the greatest folly a human can commit is sacrificing their health for any other kind of happiness, whether it be for money, fame, or career advancement. Please stop and ask yourself, are you working so hard that you're essentially just buying medicine for your future illnesses? Are you becoming a slave to money, only to use that money later to try and repair a body that is slowly falling apart from neglect? In your ordinary daily routines, have you been sitting for hours at a desk without getting up to move? Did you stay up until 2 a.m. scrolling through your phone last night, only to wake up feeling groggy and depleted? How long has it been since you woke up early enough to feel the cool morning air and see the first light of the sun? What have you been eating? Is your body trying to tell you something while you continue to ignore its signals? Schopenhauer pointed out that youth is the time for learning wisdom, and old age is the time for practicing it. But we often confuse these two, destroying our health in our youth to gain wealth, only to spend that wealth trying to regain health in our old age. Health is the one in the number of our life. Everything else, wealth, fame, status, are just the zeros that come after it. Without the one of health, all those zeros amount to nothing. If you haven't yet developed a sense of discipline in protecting your physical and mental health, if you eat unhealthily, sleep irregularly, and avoid the outdoors, you will never be able to escape that pendulum of suffering. Only when living in a healthy, vibrant body can your inner wisdom truly shine and grow. These are the core principles of happiness according to Schopenhauer. I have tried to synthesize his profound philosophies into a simple and understandable guide for you. However, it is important to remember that there is no single, perfect path to creating a rich spiritual world. Each soul has its own direction, and each person must find their own unique way of enriching their inner life. Schopenhauer's ideas are intended to be a reference map, but there are countless other methods to explore, such as mindfulness and meditation, which he practiced in silence for hours even if he didn't write about them as techniques. Looking at the world from the perspective of the 21st century, we can see that Schopenhauer's philosophy has become an even more urgent reality. We are living in an era where material excess has produced an unprecedented spiritual desert. We see soulless faces on the subway, everyone's eyes glued to their phones. We hear the constant, aggressive invitations to buy, echoing in endless live streams. We see the rise of a FOMO culture, the fear of missing out, where young people jostle for space at music festivals just to take a photo. That proves they were there, while their minds remain completely dormant and disconnected from the music itself. Streams of digital garbage flow endlessly into our consciousness. People buy dozens of new outfits every month but still complain they have nothing to wear. because they are trying to dress an empty soul. Faces are obscured by perfect digital filters as people lose their true selves, trying to transform into idealized, fake versions for the sake of social media likes. Modern illnesses like obsessive-compulsive disorder and chronic anxiety have become an invisible epidemic, exposing our inner poverty amidst a sea of material desires. We see the wellness craze growing, where people spend vast sums on expensive yoga retreats and body detoxes, yet they still cannot detoxify their souls from the poison of competition and envy. The tourism industry is booming, yet people have enough money to photograph the wonders of the world without ever stopping long enough to actually feel the breath of the land they are standing on. We live in a fast-paced culture of instant everything, from hasty meals delivered to our doors to flash romances on dating apps. Children are growing up in expensive international schools, but do not know the soul of a simple folk song. And now, in the age of artificial intelligence, amidst smart cities and automated healthcare, we are gradually losing our skills for direct dialogue and independent thinking. We are using AI to race against time to earn more money, but one day we will look back and realize that our dependence on technology has turned us into beta versions of the machines themselves. We are existing only to operate, no longer living to awaken. Ultimately, these lives will forever repeat the pattern that this materialistic society promotes. Go to school, get the job, get married, get the promotion, earn the money, get the medical treatment, die, and then begin the cycle all over again. However, amidst this overwhelming whirlwind, there are awakened individuals who are choosing a different path. They are choosing to cultivate inner richness. They are the ones who meditate under the dawn light and embrace material simplicity. They are the ones who prefer solitude and find joy in that quiet space. They are the ones who engage in deep dialogue with books and maintain their independent thinking. Despite the hustle and bustle of the city, they delve into philosophy, explore spiritual science, and dedicate themselves to their communities with a spirit of giving. They are different. They do not conform to the crowd. Yet, they are the ones truly in harmony with nature, with all living beings, and with themselves. Their difficulty in conforming to the crowd is not a sign of being antisocial, but a conscious and noble choice. After understanding the essence of life, they are like the snow lotus that can only bloom on the highest peaks of the Himalayas, far away from the pollution of the city garden. They have their own path, a path not meant for the masses. So, what about you? As you reflect on these words, which path will you choose for your own life? Will you remain a pendulum, or will you seek the center? Please, leave yourself a moment of quiet reflection right now. I am waiting to hear your answer, expressed in your own most appropriate words. Thank you so incredibly much for spending your time with us today. If you found the wisdom of Schopenhauer helpful, or if this video sparked a new thought in your mind, please do an act of kindness and share it with others who might be searching for their own inner wealth. Don't forget to give us a like to help this message reach more people. And most importantly, subscribe to the improved version channel and turn on all notifications. By joining our community, you will ensure that you never miss our weekly deep dives into the great books that offer the tools for a truly empowered and holistic life. Thank you again for your support, and I look forward to seeing you in our next video. Until then, stay wise, stay healthy, and keep enriching the world within. Take care.